A lot of people don't always realise this, but retirement actually unfolds in four predictable emotional phases, and it does surprise people. See, many people spend decades dreaming about retirement and counting down the days. You've worked hard and you deserve to enjoy your freedom completely. But here's what most people don't realise about stopping work entirely. You see, retirement isn't just one long holiday like you might imagine it is initially. So understanding these phases now can save you years of struggle later on, I think. So on slide 2, we're going to look at why this 4-phase framework matters. You'll discover why financial preparation alone isn't nearly enough just for being happy through retirement. Then, on slide 3, I'll explain the vacation phase in detail, or the holiday phase. So this is the exciting honeymoon period when retirement feels absolutely wonderful. And then slide 4 covers the loss phase, which catches most people by surprise, I find. So this is a challenging period and can involve depression and feeling completely lost without having a purpose. Then on slide 5, we'll explore what I call the trial and error phase. So this is where you experiment with different activities to find meaning again. Slide 6 then looks at the reinvent and rewire phase that many people actually never get to reach. So only some retirees make it here, but those that do, in my experience, actually thrive. So my name's Saki Sain, and I'm the founder of financialeducation.co.uk, and I've over 25 years of helping people plan for their retirement. See, this framework comes from research with thousands of retired people worldwide. It's based on global research by AgeWave and UK retirement studies combined. The thing is that most of us focus entirely on money when planning for retirement. We check our pension pots and calculate if we've saved enough. We'll sit there and we'll think about whether we can afford the lifestyle that we want. But the psychological side of retirement often gets completely ignored by everyone. And this is why so many people struggle despite having plenty of money. Work gives us far more than just a monthly paycheck. What you will find is that it provides structure, it provides purpose, identity, relationships, and a sense of accomplishment on most days. So when all that disappears overnight, the impact can be devastating. These 4 phases are predictable, especially common across UK retirees aged between 55 and 75. So knowing what's coming helps you prepare properly before it hits you. You can take steps now to smooth out the difficult transitions. So the goal isn't here to avoid the phases, because you can't do that. The goal is to move through them faster towards the rewarding end. And what you will find is that this foresight protects your well-being and happiness in later years significantly. You see, by understanding the journey ahead, you'll find it's going to make retirement feel far less scary and less confusing. So let's start by looking at phase 1, which is the vacation phase. So the vacation phase is the first experience you'll have in retirement. So this is the honeymoon period, typically lasts about a year or two for most people. Finally, you don't need to set an alarm clock every single morning. You can stay up late without worrying about being tired tomorrow. There's no more stressful commute through traffic or crowded trains to endure. You're not having to answer to bosses or dealing with difficult colleagues. Deal with all the questions you often get asked at work. See, what you'll find is that this phase feels exactly like an extended summer holiday from childhood. You might find yourself travelling, starting new hobbies, sleeping in, or just relaxing. And many people describe this as the retirement that they've always dreamed about. So there's no set routine, and you've got complete freedom over your own time. And this is exactly what you imagined when you thought about retiring happily. See, for most folks, this phase is genuinely enjoyable and feels absolutely wonderful. You're finally free from decades of workplace pressure and rigid schedules. But something will start to shift after several months of this lifestyle. And all of a sudden, the endless holidays begin to lose their shine and appeal. You might start feeling a little bit bored or restless, and you won't even realise you're necessarily feeling like that. That nagging question will start to appear. Is this all there is to retirement now? So, moving out of phase 1, after about a year, you start to hit phase 2, which is feeling lost and a little bit of a loss. See, what happens is feeling lost and experiencing loss is a second retirement phase completely. So according to Age UK, around 1 in 3 retirees experience a low mood initially once they get to this phase. And what tends to happen is that this phase catches most people completely off guard, and it gets them without any warning. You see, you thought retirement would be wonderful, but now some things just start to feel wrong. The initial excitement has worn off, and boredom starts to set in, and it can set in heavily. So you start to miss that structure that work provided for you every single day of your working life. So your sense of identity begins to feel shaky without your career. And those work relationships you took for granted, well, they've probably mostly disappeared for now. Even people that you may have worked with for 30 years are no longer in contact. You realise you've lost your sense of purpose and direction entirely. See, for some people, this phrase brings moderate or severe depression symptoms. The UK Office for National Statistics shows divorce rates actually spike for over 60s here. Physical and mental decline can accelerate when purpose disappears from life. And this is often called the 3Ds: decline, depression, and divorce. Some people feel completely lost and don't know how to move forward. But the key thing to remember is that this phase is temporary for most, with proper support and adaptation. You went from feeling wonderful to feeling empty in just a few months. And this is a phase where many retirees consider returning to work on a part-time basis just to get that fulfillment and enjoyment again. So after dealing with all the difficulties of phase 2, we now hit phase 3. So trial and error defines how retirees rebuild meaning and purpose. Trial and error is the third phase, and this is where you start experimenting. So this phase will often last between 1 and 3 years, and it does start for most people. And this rehabilitation period is about finding new meaning and purpose again. What you'll start to do is you begin to start trying out different activities just to see what sticks. Maybe you'll join a local club or start volunteering somewhere nearby. You might find that you take up community work, gardening, join a walking group, just start a new subject to learn. So research by the University of Bath shows volunteering boosts life satisfaction significantly and potentially life expectancy. So this phase requires patience because many things won't work out initially. What you'll find is that you'll fail at some activities, but each attempt builds confidence steadily and builds resilience. So it can feel humbling after decades of being skilled at work. You're a beginner again, learning new things from scratch, just like you did when you started work. And I've seen some people try 10 different activities before finding one that they actually love and enjoy. See, I find that the key is persistence and not giving up when things fail. Because what you're doing here is you're building a new life structure, one experiment at a time. And not everyone makes it through this phase and on to the final stage, which will be phase 4. But those who keep trying eventually discover activities that do bring them joy and happiness in their retirement life. So here's where we get to the final phase. Phases 2, very difficult. Phase 3, hopefully things start to get better. And phase 4 is where you reinvent and rewire. And this is the final and fulfilling phase of retirement life. See, around 60% reach here according to UK later life wellbeing studies. So, most people do get to this point where they do start to enjoy retirement. But those who do describe it as the most meaningful time in their retirement life. So what you've done is you found activities that genuinely excite you every single morning. You're connected with other people through communities and shared interests regularly. You find that you're making important contributions to society in ways that matter deeply to you. This might just be through supporting local charities or mentoring younger professionals nearby or professional businesses. So you might be volunteering, teaching, or doing creative work. But what you're doing is fulfilling your time and fulfilling your need. So you'll feel busy and engaged, but on your own terms. What you'll find is that there's purpose in your days without the pressure of work deadlines. So what you've done is you've successfully built a new identity beyond your old career path. ONS wellbeing reports show happiness levels often surpass midlife averages here at this point, and they do so significantly. So what you find is that the freedom combined with purpose creates a truly satisfying life experience. You're squeezing all the juice out of retirement as intended. And this phase can actually last for decades if you maintain it properly, but getting here requires preparation, effort, and a willingness to keep experimenting all the time. By understanding this destination, it helps you push through the difficult middle phases, especially those in phase 2 and parts of phase 3. So we bring all this together, thinking about the 4 phases. Well, what questions did they bring? So I think these are all questions you need to ask yourself in the run-up to retirement. For me, these are quite reflective questions, but I think what they will do is prepare you emotionally as well as financially. So questions to ask yourself can help you prepare for all 4 of the 4 phases. Are you relying entirely on financial planning without considering anything psychological? Have you thought about what will give your life purpose after you retire? What activities genuinely interest you beyond just killing time mindlessly? Who will you spend time with when work colleagues disappear completely? In preparation for retirement, are you building friendships and communities outside of work right now? You need to think about what gives you a sense of accomplishment and identity beyond work. Have you already started experimenting with hobbies or volunteering before you finish working? Again, it can set you up on the path. Is your partner also or your spouse prepared for the changes retirement brings? All of a sudden, you're going to be spending a lot of time together. Have you discussed how you'll both spend time together? Because this is going to be a huge change for when you are both working. And what structure will replace the routine that work currently provides you daily? And the important thing is, are you willing to try new things even if you're going to fail at them? Can you handle being a beginner again after years of expertise? You need to think about what legacy or contribution you want to make going forward. Are you prepared for the loss phase and how you're going to cope? You also need to think about who you can talk to when difficult phases, especially in phase 2, start to hit hard. So what I recommend you do is write down your answers now to all these questions, and that will help guide you through to a smoother transition into retirement.